Bom, e depois de ver
And after listening to different startup cases and how AI is used in larger companies, so let's move on to the painful aspects, regulating to prohibit, fit in legally. Many words were used throughout this first day.
But that's not really the case, and we're going to explain why. Well, the Maria Manuela Dom Marques and Clara Martins Pereira. The Maria Manuela is a member of the European Parliament, and Clara Martins is a professor, I guess. And so, Maria Manuel Marques, so I'd like to start with you. And we're always looking at the Anglo-Saxonic world. The United States gives a greater freedom for artificial intelligence to be developed, and so its progress. The European Union is sort of castrating. That's my words, but there's a greater regulation in Europe, in the United States, or in Europe. Well, digital, yes, is what's true what you said, but if you're talking about other sectors, as you said this morning, it's not true, because in the pharmaceutical industry, the United States protects its citizens in terms of the introduction of new drugs in the market, just as happens in Europe. And to give one sector, in artificial intelligence, how are we in terms of legislation and what is allowed? Just say something. I think that we've talked about this a lot today, but the self-regulation, is that enough? We're going to have guidelines with this regulation. We need them. But I would like to know whether anybody in the room would like, for example, the scan of a tumour not to be false positive. A false positive is as bad as a false negative, or not to be unfairly selected for a job that you applied for, or, for example, be discriminated, not getting a job because you was discriminated because of the place you live or the colour of your skin, or another factor of this nature, which has not really got to do with your ability to pay something or to work. And so to be identified as a criminal when you were just walking about in the underground station, come here to the Congress and you couldn't come. Well, probably none of us would be ready to run these risks, and so as to protect us of some of these risks of this nature that appeared this regulation called II Act, the regulation of artificial intelligence. And I'm not saying, as Paul Demas has showed, that many of us here present, would not be ready to share our data, including more sensitive data, for example, health, if we knew that the cure of cancer, even though it's not individual, if the term wouldn't be individual, but collective, would be made. It would be easier to do. Investigation would be quicker. Or to do. I'm giving you two examples of projects which already exist in Portugal. So the AI Act, that is the looking to see whether it is going to result somewhere, and this. We're going to try and establish this balance between taking advantage of the opportunities and to have a part for innovation and to prevent certain risks of a certain type of uses of artificial intelligence. Can we say that we're sort of in the lab at the moment? In the lab, it's not. It's now an act, but can it be altered? No, theoretically, no. The act itself, because we have a technology which changes a lot, and I'll give you one of the chapters on the generative models, was introduced in the Parliament. So the proposal was in the Parliament to be discussed when 6BT exploded, and it was a Parliament that suggested, and then it negotiated with the Council, with the collaboration of the Commission, with the votes against. So the member states, France, who didn't want to regulate yet, but it was in this technology changes a lot. But that is why the regulation is made with a certain art in terms of flexibility. And it was already said here and it refers to the acts of implementation of delegated acts which are easier to approve than the reviewing or revising the act itself and revising the annex, which says what are the applications, high-risk applications. Maybe we could have exaggerated a little bit, or maybe we're just a little bit too lenient, and so just think it's a very young in terms of what we're legislating. So we have to see how it's going to move forward. Well, I would like to know whether people want innovation for the sake of innovation. No, we want it when it's safe, when it's going to improve our lives and it's going to respect our values and rights. We want safe information. We don't want disinformation. And we want the treatments that we're given in the hospitals. So using AI are going to be have been tested and are safe. So we want innovation where we can that we can trust. And so I think this act is for us to have applications that exist everywhere in a private life and public life that contribute to, and so that can be trustworthy from a democratic point of view and from our individual points of view. So knowing these two legislative realities from the European Union and from the Anglo-Saxon world, that's American, is it easier for a company in legal terms to move forward and create, for example, what is the risk does this bring in the United States, for example? Thank you very much for the question and good afternoon. And thank you for the invitation. Congratulations to APDC for its 40th anniversary. The question is interesting. It's easier for a company to move about in the lack when there are no laws, or is there a legal element which could paralyze companies, could paralyze investment, and was resolved in the European Union by the European Act? Well, I think that it was two issues were raised here. One can be divided into two, and that is the first question regarding the regulation of artificial intelligence. So that is whether there are risks, and the countries are more unanimous that yes, there are risks, and in fact, we're not only talking about AI doomers. I'm talking about the existing risk that has to be measured and that has to be. It's more science fiction than anything else, but there are a number of risks that were identified all over the world, risks that have got to do with privacy, biases, discrimination, cybersecurity, etc. And this is identified by more or less by all countries. And the second question, which is more interesting, is and now that once the risks are identified, how do you regulate, assuming that there are first of all that there is a set of tools. There's a toolbox which that exists in different countries, and the regulation has a cost. And here, the legislators all over the world, not only the Anglo-Saxon world, but in Europe and also in global south. And so these questions and this debate is all over the world. Legislators live a kind of vision of dilemma. I was going to say more the dilemma. I was saying trilemma, because in the ideal world, a legislator would like to move forward with a regulatory proposal able to promote innovation and to be able to guarantee security, and at the same time, just simple and clear. But if we're going to talk about simple and clear solutions, we can either forbid 100%, or we can allow indiscriminately in the case you promote innovation and security. Innovation and security would be sacrificed. And so these solutions are not really on the table. We have to regulate. So if we compare the two models, and this is what I'd like to hear, that's from the European Union. We live in the European Union, we're part of it. And so a North American reality, we're talking about business, for example. If I lived in the United States, would it be much easier and had much more opportunity to develop this product? Is that myth or is it true in terms of legal regulations. I think that's a kind of balance between security and innovation. If the European Union went more towards security as the Anglo-Saxon perspective, maybe it's been a little bit more permissive. And it's a sort of way to see which is been transforming into see and learn. Where says that contacts with industry are privileged, and the creation of tools such as sandbox reports, and to make sure that the regulators should learn what should and what shouldn't do. And I think in the United States and the United Kingdom, there are many rules which are applied to artificial intelligence. And so that we're going to a more general right to a more specific right or law. And so that is any kind of crime can be done by AI. So if you look at the perspective of the United Kingdom and the perspective of the United States, it's similar. And so in the European Union, on the one hand, there is no that is any wish to regulate all sectors. So the first difference, there is no creation of an entity, regulatory body. Do you think it should have existed or not? Or should have been? So do you think that there could be an abuse? No, well, there could be. In the United States and United Kingdom could have a regulatory body with these responsibilities through the accountability of entities which at the moment are supervising different sectors. And through learning, we understand a lot to find what will be necessary in the future. It's based on this dialogue with the industry, and we're going to see what the effect of this has in terms of the business. Now, many remarks, we can have laws, and some of them imply penalties. And so how do you do this? That is, in a world which is so volatile and it's in permanent change, how can we manage that is through, even though the legislation is good, we can make A or be responsible for the use of my data. It can be more direct, that is, it's the responsibility of the person who made the computer. No. This my question. Is it easier to make people responsible for the law? I don't think it's easy. Yes, to the EU took booking to court, and so these cases want to dissuade certain to dissuade them, but the laws are violated every day. We're talking about the accountability, of course. To say there are researchers and investigations, rather, with the rights to function. We always thought that the digital world that didn't. We always thought the AI didn't need rules, but all the companies have rules in this room. Have companies. It didn't. So it was an Anglo-Saxon import to our world, that is to continental law, as one says, because it didn't. Our tradition didn't have. That is, they avoid in some areas, and we're importing their model of it on AI. So they have them in other areas in the environment and medicine, telecommunications. So they'll get that. And so, of course, we can always move back because a law can be made, it can be done and undone. And so we can see if it can be proven that it's not efficient or the risks of no longer exist, and so the law is no longer necessary. I don't know whether this will happen or not. I mean, it could happen, or the contrary could happen at this moment with the knowledge that we have. And to say that we don't legislate of nothing. There's a great deal of dialogue, great public consultation, and there's a great contacts with industry. So the legislation process is very slow. We've been working for more 5 years in order to go to the AI Act, and so it came from the previous mandate. It started in the other one, and there's been a great deal of dialogue. We have a special committee that was in the United States, and that had many scientists, many stakeholders from different areas where artificial intelligence is relevant. So it just doesn't come, fall from the sky. And so when we talk about the European Union, there are some areas that are we have an opting out clause. I don't know whether this is possible. No. And the second question is, what can Portugal do in addition to the European legislation, or does it make sense to have a certain specificity as a member country? I think that Portugal should invest in its ecosystem, and we saw in the previous panel that with these two excellent examples of how Portugal is investing in this ecosystem. So one of the projects that was shown by Paulo Dimas is even before the regulation was approved, Portugal was also creating a protocol for health space. So it's creating a prototype. And so Portugal can invest in its ecosystem. Portugal has to do this. In the test, it has to create its sandbox. Each member state has to have a text sandbox, and it has to invest a lot. There's a great investment in digital literacy and AI literacy, and so I would like to thank the APDC and Google who have presented this morning an investment investment in literacy, and so the literacy, basic literacy, because all of us have to know exactly what an algorithm is in our lives, and we all have to know this. We have to question this if we answer how this algorithm, how was it created, what data we're taking into account. We don't have to specialists. We have to know exactly what we are dealing with. And so in basic literacy, where there's a little bit of AI intelligence, it's not only to know what the program is and write, or to have an email address, but to literacy and investigation more, because one feeds another. Because 2017 AI was just the way at the end among the scientific, and now it's the core of the matter. And so looking at the American model, and in the case, to what extent can this time that is it taking time because of the experimentation and innovation that artificial intelligence has, or because it's a business matter? Up to that, we can invest a lot more. I mean, for example, in medicine, there's very tight rules, but not for AI. So the pharmaceutical industry is very rich, and so can we attract a business in an increasingly more competitive time? It's going to regulate for the United States. China has already moved forward with the regulation, a specific regulation of the fakes. And do you believe that China is going to regulate and fulfill this? The rumor is that China is preparing a regulation. It doesn't have the same values, but as for the United States, for an economic reason or development of business, is legislation not so tight? Is that why legislation is so tight? Yeah. Here, the European regulation has a very important role to play, and so I would just like to mention this question of
There's a problem. There's a trust gap which needs to be filled in, and people with no trust or AI, that a regulatory movement like the EU one can contribute to bridge this gap. Not too long ago, for instance, the European Securities Market Authority ESMA published a document which analyzes AI's position in the financial industry. And one thing it pinpoints was that the players in that area had caution in publicizing the use of AI because it's still seen by the researcher, by clients, it's still seen with a certain fear. There's a lack of literacy and trust and fear. And the EU AI Act responds to it. Wouldn't we create with the legislation AI paradises such as we have tax havens where companies will go to? Yes, we could be on that track. Or where tighter regulation favor or harm smaller companies. The EU's AI Act tries to protect the SMEs and to create systems supporting SMEs, which is important. So, are we on the way to a new branch of law, an autonomous one, such as tax law, environmental law? Is it a dynamic reality present in our life? That would be yes, in terms of responsibility, because of the defect, who is responsible, or a product that evolves, because products today go into the market, they're safe, they change many. There are many intelligent products with software which is altered. There's a responsibility issue during the product's life cycle. And also to mention, this is not only the piece of legislation you approved. We've approved pieces for data to create a European single market for database, the base for AI that could help innovators because they're in a safe environment. And this legislation, there is a law that contemplates it, but are we concerned to prevent discrimination and terrible effects of the algorithm bias? It's more in Europe with law or without law. And there also is there also this differentiation between Europe and America? Yes, there are laws preventing discrimination. In America, I don't know about Anglo-Saxonic rights. It's more comprehensive. How is AI defined, distinguished from more primitive algorithmic technologies that have been with us for since the 50s? So the technological neutrality perspective is important and is linked to an autonomous branch of the law. So to regulate these apps, and AI is not developed in a legislative vacuum. There are rules in different sectors, but we were not used to a complicated decision of a machine on our on our life and our health. And in terms of accountability, the authors, users, then it's probably fascinating for this going to court. How am I going to hold accountable a machine that has led to someone dying? But if the machine has autonomy, so we're going to go into a world which is completely different. Maria Manuel Leighton Marques, I spoke about the possible havens, paradise to use AI. Should we think that the United Nations should take a look at it in the world? We have India, China, the Middle East, we have several geographies. Each can legislate as it wishes. This is a democracy. And then we need to meet to know what's happening. It's good to say that we're united with some of the principles. We're united in the instruments. We have a more binding one. The states have not as binding instruments. In China, well, outside this scope, and China is another ball game. It's another democracy in the democratic world. Despite all of this, there's a convergence. We started the digital world thinking that it was one of absolute freedom. Today, it's not, because today we have powerful actors. We need to regulate competition markets, and the states are debating, have this open debate in regulating markets through competition rules. And today, surely enough, in the next European Parliament mandates, it's being prepared on children's protection, safe online um, situation, safe online for children that will need rules. It's very an interesting discussion on the anonymity in the network. Should it continue or not? I don't want to say much more, but again, this has to be done via through the United Nations or through other international fora in such a way that we converge what the same that happened with data protection, that union started, Japan, Korea adopted, and other countries in South America and even in California, and extended to other parts in the world. Let's see if it happens or not. Let me add a more optimistic note. The US and China are discussing common principles in regulating AI in Geneva. So there are convergent efforts that are required once that things advance, and existential risks that seem to be very distant are urgent, becoming urgent. We're speaking about real threats or fictional one, machines dominating us, and they're the ones commanding us, and so on. But we spoke about another real danger, and when it's certain to protect citizens, and criminals also are also very smart, and they're listening to the same arguments, discussing the same law. To what extent are we prepared, legally prepared, to face an AI wave of crimes? And that is a threat. Yes, there can be a problem relating to legal preparation, and a differential in terms of problem of differential of being one step behind, not only of criminals, but companies, regulars being one step behind them, and having difficulty anticipating. The EU regulation ends up by we have a proposal that suddenly at the end of 2023 is changed because of Chat GPT, a new chapter. So the idea is to prepare future-proof laws that advance at a pace of criminal company imagination, of their imagination, and there are limits, namely fact limits, because there's a lack of there's lack of resources, and the lawmaker is sensitized. Not, I'm not speaking of the state or EU. Is the national legislator motivated along these lines? Is he alert to education, health, and so on? In the states, there are also elections, but I have some doubts that AI be mentioned in a electoral campaign, and it has to be sensitized. Yes, this varies. For instance, in the states, I would like to give the example of the UK. That is, the UK having a distinct proposal for AI, a distinct strategy for regulating AI. In the EU strategy is explained because of political reasons, like Brexit. In the arguments preceding Brexit is the idea that UK was dropped, and so Brexit is a new opportunity. For UK to maintain its leadership in contrast with the EU. So not surprising that this has been a different investment. And AI regulation is very present in the public discourse in UK. And the last statistics that I saw, 60% of the people are worried with AI risks.
que também tem peso maior no
A sector with quite a lot of weight, in more weight than in Portugal, that is 16 billion pounds, very significant. Here in Portugal, well, regardless of the political sensitivity, lawmakers there's a limitation that it's a regulation. The legislator is limited. Has his hands tied to what he can do, but there's an important investment in terms of research, literacy. And it's going to be very interesting to see how different countries enforce regulation. We're speaking about fines to 7% of the annual turnover, company turnover, very significant fines. If we have regulators ready, time will tell. And we are going to have to conclude concerning havens or paradigms. But you have to sell products in the European market. But sometimes there are ways of entering in a different way. First of all, for Portugal, an authority has to be held accountable. Although a part is left in Brussels, but there's also a part which is the member state's competence. I don't know what will be the government's option in that sense, but it's a challenge. And also to translate, that is, this regulation is indeed complex. I need to recognize it, especially in terms of high risk. Chapter 113, Article 13 access, almost 500 pages, and it's important for national authorities to translate it to make it simpler. There are guidelines from Brussels, so anyone with a company will have to hire a lawyer. Maybe it could be a new business. Thank you very much. Thank you. And so let's wait for the different developments and see what will be the regulations role in the future.